One of the things we look forward to on this program every year at this time is a visit from Mike Lake, the Alberta Member of Parliament, and some members of his family. Tomorrow is Autism Awareness Day, and it's an opportunity for Mike to bring us up to date on what's happening with his son Jaden, his daughter Jenae, and what he's doing to raise awareness about autism. And with that, we welcome back to TVO the Great Lakes. There they are, Mike, the dad, in the middle, Jaden, his son, and Jenae, his daughter. It's great to see you all again. Let me rephrase. Mike, it's okay to see you again. It's really great. It's great to see your kids again, who have been here, I guess, a few times over the years. Yeah. And this is a nice opportunity to just sort of get caught up on what's going on. I want to start by, you do this every year. You give a speech around Autism Awareness Day in the House of Commons. And I remember being there one year. And I'm telling you, Mike, there's not a dry eye in the House when you do this. Here's last year's. Roll it, please.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is World Autism Awareness Day, and now 17 years since my son Jaden was diagnosed. It's also almost 16 years since his incredible sister Jenae was born. When she was just 13, in an interview with Steve Paikin, Jenae was asked a really tough question. Do you ever sometimes wish that your brother was quote-unquote normal, like every other kid? Jenae answered without hesitation, well, honestly, since Jaden was diagnosed with autism before I was born, I don't exactly know what a normal brother is like, so Jaden kinda is my normal. She continued, if he didn't have autism anymore, he wouldn't be the same as Jaden is now. Mr. Speaker, autism brings with it big challenges, varying significantly across the spectrum. But as we help him deal with his challenges, we'd never want to lose the Jaden we have now. And the more that a normal life for Canadians includes people with autism, the more we can work together through the hard stuff and allow our brothers, sisters, neighbors, and friends with autism to thrive.
Beautiful.
You, hey? And you. Yeah.
He was there in the gallery that day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and from time to time when I'm doing this statement, you can hear him hum, just like you can hear him hum in the background probably while that was playing as well. And,
just for those who haven't met Jaden before, he is obviously nonverbal, right?
Right, yeah. He can communicate with a computer or with an iPhone, and sometimes in writing, but he communicates generally in very concrete terms. But yeah, he can't say words.
How much of what's going on right now in this conversation will he comprehend?
You know what? He's very happy to be here and enjoys, like he knows that we're talking about him in general. I think that he generally understands concrete things. And of course, it's difficult to know exactly what he understands because he doesn't articulate it verbally. But generally, I think that he pretty much understands concrete things, and that's what he can communicate as well.
As with previous years, he likes to hold your hand while doing this.
Yes, absolutely.
How come?
He's just, you know what, he just generally likes contact. I mean, people with autism generally are very sensitive to touch or sound or, sight or whatever the case might be. And in Jaden's case, he likes contact. Some people with autism don't like contact at all. So it kind of just depends on the individual. But in Jaden's case, he loves high fives, he loves to hold hands, he loves to give hugs.
How old is he now?
He's 20.
He's 20 now.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you notice any difference in the way he behaves at the age of 20 from the way he behaved when he was 15 or 10 or 5 or whatever?
You know what? It's I think that's a really interesting question. He's definitely more vocal now than what he has been in the past. Oftentimes we go for drives. Driving is kind of a thing for the three of us, actually, and Jenae usually bumps him to the back seat. He loves to sit in the back seat, and she likes to sit in the front seat. And from the back seat, oftentimes as we're driving, we'll suddenly hear a squeal or a ba 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 and a tap on the window. And
what does that mean?
It means that he's seen something that's interesting, and he wants us to know about it, and he wants us to figure out what it is and say it. And so oftentimes it'll be a cow. Oh yeah, that's right, Jaden, that's a cow, or an airplane, or a train, or a interesting truck, or something like that.
Now, I'm guessing, Jenae, that you see your brother maybe a little bit more than your dad does, because he's in Ottawa, of course, half the year. And even when he's back in the riding, he has responsibilities. So I want to ask you the same question. Have you noticed any difference in the way your brother behaves at the age of 20 from, say, 15 or 10?
Well, I think there's always little changes in his behavior from year to year. He just notices new things, learns new things. Recently, Jaden has developed the habit of wanting to not yell, but, express loudly how he feels about lots of things, which is an interesting new thing to deal with, especially when you're sitting in quiet environments, and you're like, okay, Jaden, this is a time where we need to be quiet, you know, but he's just so excited about everything, and he's like, I need to express it to everybody. And then you're like, oh, okay.
He's a little more, I think, based on my previous interactions with him, he seems more excited today than he has been in previous years.
Yeah.
Is that, now, I wonder about that. I mean, we have a new set here, the lights are maybe brighter, or is maybe something happened before he came here earlier today? Mike, any guesses?
I think generally he's just more excited in general, and he vocalizes it more than he used to. He notices more things too, I think, which is really cool, and that's the point about the driving. It used to be, for example, he loves planes, but it used to be a plane would have to be really close for him to notice it and point it out. Now he can see a plane flying at 35,000 feet in the sky as we're driving and notice it and point it out to us.
What kind of an education is he getting right now?
That's interesting. He's actually switched schools. So he was in a K-12 school before, and we've talked about that before, how fantastic that school was for him. And you know, he had an aide and was in a regular classroom, and you know, they would pull him out in high school.
Totally integrated classroom?
Yeah, it was totally integrated. Although as he got older, they pulled him out of the class more to do other things that were more applicable or appropriate for him. And probably helped him more like working in the library or being involved in musical theater, sometimes helping out in the office and those kind of things. Because there's no sense him sitting in a grade 11 math class or grade 12 math class. But in the new school he's in, he's actually in an autism-specific room for people about the same age as him, sort of nearing the end of their time in high school. And it's really been important for him. So it's kind of interesting. The other day I asked him what it was that he did during the day, and he uses an iPhone with word prediction, and those of us that use anything with word prediction know that it can be imperfect sometimes. So he started to type in, and he always shows as he's typing in, so he types in H-O-R, and then hits the word horrendous. And we asked him what he did in school today, and I'm kind of going, oh, I wonder what's going on. And as I looked a little bit closer and thought about it a little bit more, I realized that what he wanted to say was horticulture, but it didn't come up as a word prediction. So that would be one of the things that they work on in school is horticulture, gardening, working in the kitchen, working on some life skills and things that will be applicable to future vocational opportunities and those kind of things, really specific to Jaden and people at a similar stage in life and development to Jaden.
This is in Edmonton, I presume.
In Edmonton, yeah.
Were you in the same school before?
I was in the same school.
You were, but now he's gone to a different school, so you're not anymore.
Yeah.
How different is life for you with Jaden not at your school anymore?
Well, I mean, I had obviously different classes than him and stuff, so I didn't see him that often. But I mean, sometimes when I walk through the library and stuff at school, I'm kind of sad not to see him there. I'm like, oh, Jaden isn't here anymore. But I know that he loves his new school, and it's so good for him.
How do you know?
Well, he gets really excited about the stuff that he's doing, and they do like swimming and cooking and stuff, and those are things that Jaden absolutely loves. Plus, he gets to take the bus every day, which Jaden absolutely loves too. He loves anything travel related. He's so independent. He walks up to the bus by himself and then gets on and oh.
Did you have any concerns when he left for a different school that he's not going to see you in school anymore and he may miss that familiarity?
Well, I just knew that it was good for him, all the new stuff that they're having, and I don't know how much time he spent around other kids with autism, so I think that's probably been an interesting new experience for him too.
Mike, can you go into that a bit? Because of course, two schools of thought on this. One is complete integration in a regular public school setting, and the other would be a more specific to autism type of education. What's better?
You know what? I think it really depends on the kid. So we meet Jaden, and you've met Jaden. You meet one person with autism, but everybody on the spectrum is in a different place on the spectrum, and just like anybody else, they have unique skills and abilities and unique challenges, and so you want to have an environment that's going to best help them with that. At the same time, what's really important to me is that the other people around, that their normal includes people like Jaden, as Jenae mentioned in that in the last time that we were here. And so, you know, in Jaden's case, it's worked really, really well for him to be in a regular classroom because of sort of the type of student he was and the type of help he had. But I've visited autism classrooms within a broader school, sort of a regular school system where you had an autism classroom, but you have the kids included in other ways throughout the day with, you know, phys ed class or with recess and buddying up with other students and things like that. And that works really well for them. So it really depends on the individual. I'd say that the goal should be, though, you know, an integration to the level that you possibly can, whenever possible, and that goes beyond school. That's life.
life.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a tough question?
Sure. I always expect you to, so.
Every parent who sends their child off to school wants that child to thrive as much as is humanly possible. And when we recently got together, you told me about the play that your daughter is in, and you're in Les Mis right now. Eh? You're in a production of Les Mis.
Yeah.
And you're thriving. You're doing your dad says you're doing fabulously and just loving it. You know that every day you send Jaden off to school, he's not really improving, is he? And is that hard for everybody?
You know what, first of all, actually, I think he is improving. He might be improving in different things. So, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that over life, we don't celebrate any less than anybody else. We just celebrate different accomplishments, different things. And in Jaden's case, you know, I do think that he is noticing more. He's learning he's learning skills that are going to help him as he moves forward. I think Jaden will have a job that pays him to work at some point, whether it's in a library or a warehouse or somewhere else where he can use his unique skill sets. And if he's going to be able to do that, just like all of us, we need to cultivate those skills. And we also need to mitigate any challenges that we have, things that we have difficulty dealing with. And that's no different for Jaden. And I think Jaden is progressing in those areas. And I'll tell you, we celebrate those things every day. You know, Jaden may not play hockey. I played hockey a lot growing up, and I always envisioned having a son that played hockey. And he played for a couple of years in initiation because the coach made an effort to include him. But where he's found his niche is in bowling. And he goes out bowling every Saturday morning from 10 till noon, and it's sort of one of the non-negotiable spots in my schedule. And when he's out bowling and he bowls a strike, there's a celebration just as though he scored a goal in a hockey game or anything else. It's just a different path than I expected, but again, we don't celebrate any less.
You say his special skill set.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Well, it's interesting because, when I'm talking to university students, we have this conversation all the time. I do a lot of speaking and talking about the fact that inclusion shouldn't be an end. In Jaden's case, inclusion is a means to an end. And what I mean to that is that he's been surrounded by kids who have worked hard to include him in different things, and musical theater was one of those things. But because they've become friends with him and because they've included him in things, they've noticed going back that he was very good at certain things. And they have his interest at heart, so they do pay attention to these things. So some of those kids that were in the K-12 school that he was in would remember that he was really good at his times tables. Perfect on his times tables, faster than any other kid in grade 4.
Okay, help us out on that. Jaden can do times tables?
Oh, he was phenomenal when he was younger. I haven't actually seen him do a times table for a long time, but he memorizes, he visualizes things that are concrete. And when it's, that level of math was really easy for him. Spelling exams, spelling tests, he did better than almost any other kid on spelling tests because he can visualize the words and spell them. When you see him do a word search, it's phenomenal how fast he can find words in a word search. And if you were to, I don't know if he would do it on a piece of paper that you have there, but if you were to have him write down a Z, he would probably, let's see if he'll do it here on the back of this paper. If I write down a Z, let's just see what he does. Okay, can you go from there?
Oh my gosh, he's writing the alphabet backwards.
Yeah.
I don't think the three of us could do that.
Not that fast.
That's astonishing.
Yeah. So he sees things differently than we see them, right? And so there is a skill set there. That's pretty cool. Do you want a high five?
Hey, Jaden. Yeah, high five, buddy. That's fantastic.
It's kind of interesting because I've never actually seen him write it. I've only seen him,
He did that in 10 seconds.
He did that when he was 2, though. And so when we were, one time we had a friend who was playing with the foam letters of the alphabet, the ones that every kid learns their alphabet on now, and with the foam frame. And this friend took away the frame and put the A down first, and Jaden proceeded to put the alphabet in perfect order out of a jumble faster than I could. And then this friend on a whim just grabbed the Z and put the Z down, and Jaden put it in reverse order as fast as he put it in forwards order as a child. And so he sees things differently. And so how do we cultivate those skill sets, that visual memory that he has? And this is where the opportunity lies, right? And people with autism, just like everybody else, have unique skills and abilities. And so often we're focused on the challenges and we miss the skills and abilities. And we don't do that with anyone else. Everyone else, we ask them what they're good at, and we try and find a path for them to contribute to society in that regard. And none of us would be happy if people were always focused on our challenges. Why would it be any different with people with autism or other developmental disabilities, right?
Has he seen your play yet?
Oh, we haven't performed it yet or
You haven't done it
We're
yet?
just working on it.
It's still in the development phase?
I think it's beginning of June, right?
Okay. I presume he's going to be invited to come and watch it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and he'll probably squeal and point at her.
Now,
when
that's
he
what
sees
I
her
was
on
going to
stage.
ask Jenae. When you're up there on stage and he knows that's his sister performing, and you're playing Cosette?
Little Cosette or something.
Little Cosette, okay, and you've got this very emotional number where you've just been abandoned by your parents or something like that. Your mother's died. That's right, Little Cosette. Your mother's died, and it's a terribly emotional moment, and then he'll do something like that in the middle of the performance. What are you going to do?
Probably keep going, hopefully.
I think we're all used to keeping going when
Yeah.
Jaden interrupts
That's
something.
it.
So that's just part of life.
Can you, let me put it this way. Every time he's visited this studio, I've never seen him in a bad mood. Is he ever in a bad mood?
He can be. He can be sad sometimes, and when he is, he cries, and people with autism don't deal with those abstract emotions sometimes the same as you or I would. There's a real difficulty in those types of connections. So for him, when he's sad, he'll just cry, and you kind of have to figure out what it is. And it's hard for him to explain what it might be. And oftentimes I was explaining, we spoke at We Day in Saskatoon a few weeks back, and it was a very, very busy day. And so, we'd been running from one thing to another, and he did fantastic job there. And then I got to the airport, 2-hour flight delay, and for whatever reason, he became shaky and anxious and just started crying a little bit. Yeah, it's you think you're going home at a certain time, and it's a little disappointing maybe, but he can't articulate what it is. And so we found a quiet corner of the airport, and he sat on my lap, and I held him for about half an hour until he was able to just calm down, and then we got onto other things. And sometimes with Jaden, that's kind of what you got to do, because you can't have the conversation about it like you might have with someone else.
Jenae, if Dad's not around, or if Mom's not around, and it's just you two, and he gets sad, what do you do?
Probably a similar thing. Just kind of, he loves being he always goes right for a hug if he's upset. That comforts him right away. Sometimes you can just sing a song, if you're happy and you know it or something, and he kind of cheers up a little bit, something he recognizes. Yeah. You just kind of have to be there with him, because there's not much else you can do. You can't, like he said, you can't have a conversation with him about it and figure out what's wrong. You just kind of got to be there with him until he gets through it.
How old are you now?
I'm 16.
You're 16.
Yeah.
You are unbelievably poised and impressive for 16, I got to tell you. Because I remember the first year you were here, Jenae, and you didn't necessarily want to come on TV and do this. You were a little bit nervous. You are just turning into a fabulous young woman.
Thank you.
Let's, Mike, the Ontario government, in its last budget, earmarked $333 million over 5 years for autism. What did you think of that when you heard about that?
It's important. It's important. In both Ontario and Quebec up to this point, families are waiting 2 years for diagnosis and 2 years for treatment. And that's a window of opportunity. So your kid's 2 and you know that they have autism. There's enough awareness out there that often that's the case, but you can't get an official diagnosis till they're 4. And then even once you have the diagnosis, you're on a wait list to get treatment. And so this is a substantial amount of money that I think is going to be important in changing the lives of people with autism in this province, for sure.
What else is on your plate right now in terms of trying to get the word out, raise awareness, keep autism in the headlines?
We do a lot of this on the government side when I was in government. Now, obviously, it's opposition right now, but
we haven't actually said that yet. You're a Conservative MP, and you're now on the opposition side.
So
obviously.
continuing to try and move the ball forward on policy. We made substantial headway as a government the last 2 years at the federal level in areas that sort of fall under federal jurisdiction, and want to continue to see that ball move. But we want to see that happen not just in Canada. We want to see that happen around the world. And so,
actually, can we talk about this for a second?
Absolutely.
I think people are interested in how ideas become policy.
Sure.
And you're a guy who, at some level had direct access to the Prime Minister of Canada, to the Finance Minister of Canada. You're sitting there in the caucus. How does it work? How do you get the PM and the finance minister to pony up for autism?
I think that generally my rule of thumb for any level of government, no matter where it is, people get involved because they want to make a difference, right? They want to help people, and so if they understand, they'll want to do something about it. And in our case, certainly that statement every year in the House of Commons, and taking Jaden around and having him individually meet as many people as we can in all parties is really important. We've also hosted an event every year where we had 10 people with autism come in across the spectrum, across the age range, boys, male, female, whatever the case is, and then invite members of parliament and senators to come and meet them. And we've done that every year for the past several years, and it's been a great opportunity for people to become more aware. But last year, for example, had a conversation with Joe Oliver, the finance minister, and showed him a story on my iPad one day when we were sitting in the lobby of Jaden working in the library, this story from CTV. And so Jaden, is phenomenal working in the library, and you could see that in this 2-minute video that he understood what not only the challenges were,
Joe Oliver understood.
What the opportunities were, and he was impacted by it. And I think that's why we go so far to share the story as much as we do, because people often ask that.
Was the impact significant enough for him to mention autism in a budget?
We had autism mentioned in both the 2014 and 2015 budgets.
And do you think it's because you pulled Joe Oliver aside and showed him a video?
I think it's because there was a
You can take some credit for this if that's
I think
appropriate.
that it's because there was a recognition that this is a big issue. It's more prevalent than most things that affect children combined, and there's a lack of understanding as to what's causing it, and when you look at the lifelong impact of it, it's a big issue. You look at the number of parents these days that are not vaccinating their kids because they're afraid of autism and they don't know what's going on. And that's pretty scary stuff.
Doesn't that drive you crazy? Does that not drive you crazy?
It absolutely does. And so I think in the budget there was there were measures taken that were a recognition of that, and I would say that we played a role in that, and certainly Jaden has a huge impact on those types of things because he's so honest with people, and he gets so connected with people, but yet you can also see the challenges. And we always make a strong point when we're having these conversations to make sure we mention that Jaden's just one person with autism, and that there's a spectrum. And while many of the challenges and opportunities may be similar, each person is individual and faces their own unique circumstances as well. So
let's finish up on this, Mike, in our last minute, and that is, there are 200 different kinds of cancers out there, all of which want funding for their research. And you pick a part of the body, and there is an organization or a foundation designed to help raise money to try and improve this world in whatever respect it can. And you're out there trying to make the case for autism. And everybody's got a good story to tell, right? Everybody has an equal and pretty much an equal and worthy case to make. How do you make your case? How do you get it up the list?
You know what? It's first of all, I don't like to think of it as competing, because I think that.
But you are. At the end of the day, everybody's competing for a finite amount of money.
So in our case, our story is one that includes autism. Everybody has a story to tell that would include something else, and I can tell as an expert what it's like to be a parent of a child with autism, and we're going to make sure that we do that so that we can help other families that are living in similar circumstances. And within the autism community, we have just wonderful stakeholders here in the country who have played critical roles in moving this ball forward over time. But there's also a recognition that we're not the only thing going on, and part of our conversation over the recent times here has been, how do we also have impact with the awareness that we're building, with the research that's being done, and all of the steps that we're taking forward? How do we have impact for other people in similar type circumstances that don't have autism?
Well, as I said off the top, we do look forward to your visit every year, especially Jenae and Jaden. Mike, you're an Oiler fan, so not so much you, but definitely for your offspring. And tomorrow being Autism Awareness Day, we are grateful you made the time for us, and we wish you guys well in the year ahead.
You gonna give him a high five? You always gotta give him a high five, hey? Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's a nice tradition, Jaden. Thank you for that. Thanks,
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.